Hey guys, Rick here for episode 6 of Cage Side Convos. Here as always with my man Quince.
What up, guys?
Real quick, last week I had the opportunity to go to Wisconsin, train with some friends of mine out there. So if you guys tuned in on Friday, I sat down with my friend Mike Sixel out there that owns Neutral Ground Stephen Point. And we chatted a little bit, kind of really focusing a lot on coaching, a lot of martial arts and stuff. Obviously, that's the biggest thing we have in common. That's how I met him. But in that conversation, as always, whether you're talking coaching or whether you're talking building your own business, opening your own gym, developing that, not only is developing the community that's involved in the gym, but developing the business aspect. Inherently, you talk a lot about sacrifice. Obviously there's a lot of time that goes into it, financial sacrifice, time management, time away from the family. And whenever you talk about sacrifice, especially when there's family related, time away from them, inherently you end up talking about self-doubt.
Sure.
Whether that sacrifice is worth it, whether ultimately you're going to be successful. Anybody that's ever opened a business knows, at least for the first couple of years, you're not even making money. You're scrambling. In the gym community, people aren't consistent. Are your classes worthwhile? Is your coaching good enough? So a lot of doubt. Like I said, a lot of sacrifice too. Ultimately, if you sacrifice long enough, if you can override that feeling of self-doubt, ultimately you'll be successful, and I've known those guys out there for almost 2 years now, and it's the gym's still there. The same people that I met the first time I went out over a year and a half ago are still training, so ultimately he's experienced some success, right?
Sure.
And a lot of that stuff resonated with me. I've been training at Top Team now for over 5 years. I've been a coach here for most of that time, and we've seen a lot of ups and downs and stuff. But I spend a lot of time here, so I'd say there's a little bit of sacrifice. And then the self-doubt is endless. Especially when you start a new class and there's nobody here, or
right.
A class that's usually jumping and nobody shows up. The first thought that pops in your mind is, am I doing something that's wrong? Am I driving people away?
Right.
So yeah, that kind of notion of sacrifice and self-doubt really, really prevalent in my mind. And so when we started chatting about success and the way you phrase it, pitfalls of success, kind of that, the unseen, I guess like the potholes along the road to being successful, and a lot of stuff that people either forget. Or people don't see, or people look at someone who they deem successful, and they think that they just got there overnight, or they got there without struggle or without heartache and stuff. Which, like I said, it really resonated with me a lot, especially after the most recent conversation we had. And I guess kind of for you, along those lines, the self-doubt or the sacrifice, you know what I mean? How'd that resonate with you?
Yeah, well, it was all learned as far as sacrifice is needed.
Sure.
Self-doubt is natural. These were things that I learned going through. So the first time you come across some self-doubt, on a new journey or on a new path, you take it personal. You're like, what am I doing? What am I not doing? Are people, this will never work. Honestly, as far as self-doubt, being a musician and being a hip hop musician or a rapper in an area where hip hop is not that prevalent, a lot of people have doubts to begin with, even when approaching me or even chatting with me. They're like, oh, why are you in upstate New York or the North Country? They're like, nothing will ever pop off here. Nobody really listens to hip hop. And I don't really, and at first I brushed it off, but like in the back of my mind, I'm like, maybe I do need to go someplace else where hip hop is a thing, and I start doubting where I'm at. But once you progress through these thoughts and these ideas and reflect a little bit, I come to, certain understandings that it's a lifestyle journey. You know what I mean? We set goals along the way, but stuff like what I can do anywhere I'm at. Wherever I'm at, there's hip hop. Hip hop lives here. So, certain doubts like that I'm able to eradicate once I, take some time to myself and redefine what success is to me and maybe not to other people. Even if friends, family members, whoever, who care about you and have concerns bring to you these doubts, their idea or definition of success might not match your own. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that sort of understanding helps me to relieve a lot of this doubt.
Right.
Just being able to be honest with myself and fully communicative to myself.
Right.
You know
Absolutely. I like. So the way you phrase that is kind of the first time it's ever been put in that light for me, and it makes a lot of sense. Is that sacrifice is needed, and the self-doubt is natural, right? Which I think is necessary for people to understand. Even myself, just kind of starting to mull it over a little bit. Everybody knows if you want to be successful, you have to sacrifice, right? And that anybody will tell you that. Even people that have never experienced success, right? In whatever definition of it is, whatever, obviously we have to understand success from our own point of view.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start sacrificing and stuff, there's some days where you kind of feel like you have nothing, where nothing's going right. You're just putting in hours and hours and hours and hours, and nothing's making sense, right? And then that's when that natural self-doubt crops up, right? And kind of like you said about defining success is I guess for you, when you first started really getting into hip hop, mm-hmm. right? What kind of picture of success did you have in your mind? What was success to you when you first started?
When I first started, it was out of a need. You know what I mean? I needed a productive use of my time, and it had to come from a place that really spoke to me or meant something to me.
Right.
I needed something in my life that would make me view my life as something that was worth progressing. That I could work up to. So I think a lot of times when you talk about really trying to elevate every day, as far as success. So hip hop and music brought that to my life. I wanted to learn about everything. I wanted to learn, the history, not only of hip hop, but like the history of like the world, man. And how things come together, how people interact with each other. I wanted to change my diet, my exercise routine.
Right.
It's like all of these small little things I wanted to be better at.
Right.
And add to my character and my surroundings and environment, because that is how I could produce better music.
Sure.
So like I said, I was just at a point in life where I needed something that opened up that vision and that view of the future. And gave me something to work towards.
Right.
That's how it came about, and it's just been progressing from there.
Right. So that's interesting. What because usually, and kind of what happened for me, right, is that I think usually what it is that people, when they start something, they have success idealized as this big, like, grandiose thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like most musicians that I've talked to. What's success to you? Touring band, CDs, popularity, you know what I mean? Nationally known, money,
Sure.
And even for me, my initial vision of success, actually something that Mike and I talked a lot about on Friday was like when you start, success means like a big gym, mm-hmm. fighters, clients, people, full mats, all this square footage and stuff. And that's usually, I think, where most people start out. It's just like mm-hmm. big, grandiose idea of this is what it means to be successful.
Right.
And then I think the people that ultimately end up being successful are people that kind of start dialing that back and start understanding success in a different way, start kind of redefining success for themselves, and more, and probably why you've been able to stick with what you're doing for so long, especially in like such a culturally desolate area, is that you started out with an idea of success being a little more fluid, right? So like for you, like and I mean, I'm sure that you've probably daydreamed ideas of rocking big shows.
I'm daydreaming that right now.
Yeah, right. But it's interesting that, the way you break down, even your initial understanding of what it was to be successful is you just wanted to better yourself, even right from jump.
Right. And the thing is, I didn't even get into music till later in life. So I think maybe I was of a different maturity or a different understanding of what I needed, because I had chased other people's ideas of success. I had gone to college a couple times, or taken jobs in which I thought might bring in money or bring in success, and those things just weren't working for me, man. I was very unfocused. I was very reckless. You know what I mean? And so I knew that those things that I was doing that allowed me to be in that state of mind of being unfocused and reckless. Clearly, it just wasn't for me. And so
I guess in other avenues, in other explorations, you'd already experienced those like pitfalls of success, or the things that, so initially we kind of said even pitfalls of success are like things that you run into along the way to being successful. But I think even like a subcategory is a pitfall of success being like chasing a dream that's not there, like chasing a success that's not for you. Right? So I guess you kind of experienced that in other career endeavors, like through college or through other jobs and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I was, really good at sports growing up. And so I figured I would just do that as long as possible. I'd get into coaching. And maybe even teaching. And I still love sports to this day. But I was good at it. I was good at it. It wasn't necessarily, it wasn't always coming from the heart, per se. And these things are normal and natural. I was young at the time. And easily influenced, and also didn't have that much experience knowing the rest of the world and the rest of the opportunity out there. So it's not like I didn't go through those things at first. It's because I went through those things, I was able to better define my vision or my view of success. Really. But I mean, like, as far as yourself, what was it that kind of led you, that you felt it was worth the sacrifice, to really put your entire life, because it's not just doing it on a Tuesday, Thursday morning. You know what I mean? This is around the clock when people aren't watching. Yeah,
absolutely, man. And it's interesting, list the parallels between a lot of the stuff you talked about. Like right out of high school, I went to college, and I mean, I went to college for architecture. I was already an intern at an architectural firm, so I had like everything in front of me laid out. It would have been easy. It would have been super easy for me just to finish, 4 years of college, 5 years of college, move right into a job I already pretty much had, and I could have made money, and I liked it. It was neat and stuff, but it just wasn't. I think kind of what you touched on, it wasn't worth the sacrifice. It wasn't worth the 24-hour-a-day commitment. So, kind of same thing as you, like college just wasn't for me. It wasn't where I was going to find what I felt success was. And even at that time, it was very illy defined. Like I didn't, I thought success, and for a long time I wanted to get married and have kids and have a house and live suburban life and stuff like that.
The storybook.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And even through time, like that's kind of faded and redefined my, I don't think that's necessarily success for me. I don't think that's where I'm going to be happiest. And, especially like I started getting jobs where I could travel a lot. I lived, when I first moved up to New York, I lived out in Rochester with my mom, and I had a job that sent me to like Indianapolis. I went to North Dakota. I traveled all over Pennsylvania and New York, man, just constantly traveling and seeing the world and experiencing things. And started to really understand that notion of traveling and experiencing the world was kind of something I wanted to do. So whatever job I had, I wanted that to be part of it, and then so I worked construction for a while, and then I worked at a cheese plant, which is like a corporate job. It was just horrible, man. I hated it. Working, 8 to 10 hours, working overnights and working with shitty people and just, super unhappy. But like at that time, still, I had to make money to be successful. I needed that income. And then once I started training and stuff, and I've told this story before about how I started training as a personal trainer, and I thought I was going to make money doing that. But I still had that financial gain in the forefront of my mind, and because that was still tied to success. And then once I started, getting into it a little bit more and started understanding how I could affect people's lives. And then I started, training martial arts and stuff, and started understanding I could change people's lives, and I could travel, and I could make just enough money to get by. Like I could make money to pay my bills, and then all of a sudden it hit me in my mind that, okay, I wasn't, I was never going to have a bankroll. I wasn't going to have a stacked bank account. I was never going to have like a flashy car and stuff, but I would have enough. And the 24-hour sacrifice, it started, it was necessary. It needed to happen, or it wasn't going to work, but then I found myself just loving it, and like I never felt like I could give too much. Like I can give everything I have, and I can never give more than I can handle.
Right.
Whereas you work a job that you hate, and the little bit of sacrifice, you're like, I gotta wake up early today.
Sure. You're looking at the clock every 5 minutes. My question for you, I guess, going through this transformation or transition, how did the people around you take it? Like, how did they? Could you see change in them, or?
So the people that have been around me, like for my whole life through all this transformation and stuff, man, family, close friends and stuff, those people always very supportive. Always, I can understand why you did this. I can understand why you made that move. As long as you're happy, and that's
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and definitely very grateful to have those people in my life. But there are definitely people I've met along the way, and that have all fallen to the wayside. People that don't stick around, because those are the people that are like, especially when you quit a good job, high-paying job. People are like, why would you do that? That doesn't make sense.
Right.
Like, how are you going to afford a car? How are you going to afford this? How are you going to afford that? Because they take their definition of success and they apply it to your life,
right.
And you don't match up to that. So then they put their doubts on you. And you kind of touched on that a little bit ago, how other people will express their doubts because your success doesn't match up to theirs. Which I'm not saying, people won't be happy with having a good job and being able to support their family and stuff. And a lot of people are very, very happy doing that.
Sure.
But man, you see so many people that aren't. And they apply this strict idea of success to a lifestyle. So this lifestyle has to equal success, and it causes a lot of like cognitive dissonance. You know what I mean? A lot of discrepancy between the way things are and the way we want things to be.
Gotcha.
Which I think is where a lot of happiness comes from. I like Mike, what you said there. Strive not to be a person of success, but a person of value. And I think that redefining your success, right, into becoming a valuable person. So like you said, with your journey into hip hop and stuff, like you wanted to better yourself.
Sure.
And you wanted to not only be able to relate to yourself, but able to relate to the world around you, and to relate the world around you to other people.
Yep. And music was that way of doing it. I mean, there could be a million ways of doing jiu-jitsu. Right. Starting your own company, your own business, and being an entrepreneur. But yeah, it's finding that spark, or that seed that helps you, grow into being the best person that you can be, that you can be individually. Absolutely. And that having that, you talking about having a solid core, that family core of support is huge, because not everybody has that, which helps push that whole self-doubt issue a little bit further. So, and I did have, the small core of, some of my family members who were very supportive. Maybe they certainly didn't understand. Sure. But I came from, my grandparents are both musicians. My grandfather, he's got his own orchestra. He was a music teacher for decades. Right. He ran the band there, and even now still participates with his own symphony or orchestra. Right. So, it wasn't too off the wall. I think what surprised the most is that I wasn't as much as I always sought after music when I was younger and used music in my life in different ways. I never played music. Right. I never wrote no instruments or anything like that. So I think it caught him by surprise. But it's not too far from the tree from which I fell, I guess. Sure. So in that sense, I did have support, more coming from love, not necessarily understanding, but love. Right. But there were, once I started putting out music, like there were friends that I had kind of, and not even intentionally, but just kind of drifted away from and drifted apart from. They'd hit me up and they're like, dude, I didn't even know you did any of this, you know? And it was strange to me because I was so locked into what I was doing. And like you were saying, you could never give enough time to certain things and not feel depleted. Like I was so in this zone for months, years, that the time that passed, I didn't even notice.
Right.
You know, I naturally, probably they wouldn't see me out as much.
Sure.
Or I wouldn't be reaching out as much, or I wasn't as available.
Sure.
And, you know, at first that hurt. You know, I felt bad.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, I'm not a good friend. I'm not a good brother. I'm not a good. But the people that were going through it themselves, they understood.
Right.
You know, which meant a lot to me and helped to, you know, ease my self-doubt.
Sure.
Now, of course, the people who we kind of linked up or associated through partying or drinking or drugs or things like that, you know, they felt how they felt. Sure. You know, even now, and this is a continual process for me, because even now, you know, I'm still continually looking to learn and make lifestyle changes, which might separate me from some of the things of the past.
Right.
And, you know, I think that's what real sacrifice is. It's not just giving up, you know, it's not just giving up anything. It's you're still giving up things of value to you.
Right.
You know, so going out and socializing and partying, it still has a value to me. Doesn't mean it's necessarily positive all the time, but it still has a value. Right. But you're giving up things of value now in order to, you know, be a part of this future that you kind of see in your mind for the successful future. So, you know, a lot of things involving sacrifice at first came by way of people, relationships, friends. I mean, even relationships, you know, I've been in several relationships, and while things are enjoyable in the present time, you know what I mean? I'm always working toward the future. Yeah. Some people that I, you know, had been with, they were satisfied where I was then. Right. And they wanted me to stay that. Right. And they wanted me to make a life and foundation out of that. And at times I tried doing both. Sure. Thinking that I could do that. And truthfully, while I'm on this journey, you know, the people close to me also are kind of on this journey. You got to understand that this is a, you know, work in progress. Right. And it's just not, it's not going to work for everybody. Right. And that was a hard lesson to learn, because sometimes even love, or what maybe I thought love was at the time, wasn't enough to keep me from doing what I felt like I had to do and be a part of. Absolutely, man. That's the big word that you touched on there was value and sacrifice, right? So if you're giving up fringe items, you know, like, and you and I have talked here and there, you know, about like drugs, alcohol, whatever, like fringe things, like, we, you know, give them up here and there. And it's almost easier sometimes, like, especially as you kind of evolve in life, and it's easier to just be like, I'm not going to drink tonight, fuck it, you know. So that it becomes less of a sacrifice to give that up, because you understand there's no value to it, right? But true sacrifice comes in when you are foregoing things of value. So like you said, man, a huge thing is being in a relationship with somebody, loving them, you know, and there's all kinds of definitions of love and iterations of love and stuff. And but I think when you fall in love with somebody, you really do, and it's significant, you know. But when you realize that you're outgrowing that person or outgrowing that relationship or shit, sometimes they outgrowing you. Right. Yeah. Right. You know, so you change, and if the person you're with can change with you, like you said, they're on that journey too. Right. You know, everybody's walking their own paths, and our paths are only crossed for so long. Right. And there's a reason for it. Can they adapt? Can they change? Are they willing to? Do they want that? Does your growth match their growth? You know, or do they understand that you're going to have to be like, I'm going to outgrow you for a little bit, and then you're going to outgrow me for a little bit, but we both want to be there and be supportive and understanding. Sure. You know?
And so when you get to a point where you understand that it's not like, okay, our paths have to separate now, man. And especially if you've been with that person for a while, it sucks, it hurts, and it's a big sacrifice, you know, because there's so much value to it. Or say, you know, like you have a friend, like say it was just like a drinking buddy or whatever, you know, but you guys get close together because you spent all that time drinking together, and you become, you know, genuine friends, right? And I think that real friendships and real bonds can be forged through that party kind of atmosphere. Well, if you quit drinking, you quit partying, you have to sacrifice that, and you sacrifice time with that person.
Right.
You know, it can be a person that's very close to you, and then you're giving up that time because it's time for you to grow in a different direction. The same thing, man, is you know, a romantic relationship is these platonic relationships, these friends, you know. If they're not growing, if they're not changing the same way you are, then you have to disconnect. You have to sacrifice either time together or sacrifice that relationship as you knew it, you know. And because whether or not your idea of success has changed, or whether you're just on the part of that path to success that doesn't include staying still anymore. You know, and it's hard, you know, and then self-doubt.
And then self-doubt, because that's lonely, man. You know, it's, of course, it's cliche when people say it's lonely at the top, but it's not only the top. You know what I mean? It's not only the top. But you know, with trusting that process and going through that, you do end up finding other people that have gone through, you know, similar things, trying to reach, you know, similar levels as they elevate through. And there are always connections to be made. You know what I mean? To be made as there are lost. So, you know, I think that's why, you know, this topic is so important to talk about, because, you know, of course, people think of success and they're like money, celebration, party, and all things good. You know, but showing the opposites, the balance, you know, there's a balance to success, and I think showing and talking about both sides is very necessary.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I think it's very important, and like you said, the loneliness along the way, I think is something that people downplay. I think that's one of the things that's least talked about, because even when you have friends that are close to you, even when you have people that are supportive of your journey, that want to see you succeed, that are helping you succeed, it's still lonely, because a lot of where our growth comes from is that self-reflection, is that self-evaluation, right? And that battle of self-doubt. You know, a lot of stuff happens inside ourselves when we're pushing ourselves to be successful, you know, and it's nice, like, we'll find people to relate to. Like, naturally, you know, kind of the balance of energy in the universe and all that stuff is like, we're going to find people that match up to us, and people that are on our path right now. And, you know, and our paths cross with people for certain reasons, you know, but even when you feel like you have people you're connected to, and even when you feel like you have a great support basis, even when you're happy and stuff, there's still sometimes it's going to be lonely, because sometimes you have to sit down with yourself, and you're the only person that can have that discussion on your own, you know. You know, and I think if, you know, when it's lonely at the top is because you've lost so many people along the way that weren't supportive. But I think you stay at the top long enough, you'll find those other people that are
certainly,
you
know, because the sacrifice and the working towards success, I mean, it takes stamina. You know, it's a lot of work, man, and not everyone is built for that. So I think that's another reason why it's lonely. You know, and another thing that you know, crosses my mind and that I've seen and dealt with is, like, honestly, not everybody cares, and not everybody has to care what you're doing. But, you know, as long as you understand what you're doing it for, you know, and keep affirming that, those are some of the things that help you get through, because everybody is going through their own shit, honestly. And whether they're going up, down, or nowhere, you know, the same exact place, that's fine, that's okay. But nobody has to care what you're going through. Whether you succeed, fail, or otherwise. And at first, I would take offense, you know, and I was like, ooh, I'm putting in all this work. Nobody cares. Nobody notices, recognizes. But I've been over that. I'm over it. I'm over it, because there's no real value to me in that. Because I understand, I probably, from their perspective, I look like the person that doesn't care.
Yeah.
while really, I'm
right.
focused and I'm bettering myself. Like, I want everyone to better themselves.
Sure.
And I hope that they are. And just because I'm not calling every day or checking, doesn't change that. So I think, again, it's going through it and it's maturing a little bit. But nonetheless, it's still a lonely feeling.
Right.
To go through this.
Absolutely.
But the value of the weight of what you're after, or the weight that this idea of success holds, has got to outweigh all of those things.
Right. Absolutely, man. You mentioned, like other people don't care and other people don't have to care, right? Because you have to care.
Right.
And you also, when you were saying everybody's going through their own stuff. Either people are going up, they might be going down, or they might be kind of flatlining. Right. And I think one of the biggest things that really kind of keeps me sharp is that fear of becoming that person that's flatlining. Because like we see those people so often, and the people that we outgrow, the people that they don't care, or those are the people that perceive that we don't care, is the people that want to just be static and are happy where they're at. And they've already succeeded.
And that's okay.
And it relates back to that tangible versus intangible goal setting that we talked about. People with tangible goals tend to, in my mind, tend to flatline. They get their house, they get their car, they get the job that they want, and then they're okay with that, which is fine. Like you said, but for me, being complacent is just like, is such a deep-seated fear that sometimes it keeps me from admitting that I've been successful.
It keeps you from admitting that you've been successful.
Right. And so what I mean by that is that, we talked about setting goals, about having markers along the way. We have to have small little successes on the way to our big success, because it's the only way to keep yourself disciplined or find motivation when you need it, is we have to know that through this fog of life that we're kind of in the right direction. Well, when I've had like the most significant thing to me in my life, and the coolest thing, and what I get the most motivation out, and what I fall in love with every single time, is when somebody comes to me and says that something I've said or something I've done has made a difference for them. Or when someone's like, "Oh, coach, I was working on this that you told me about, and I was able to implement it when I was sparring or training or something like that," or that's awesome. And it's so hard to accept it when somebody says that, to just say, "Oh, thank you, man. Thank you for telling me that. I'm really happy for you." A lot of what happens is that I found myself deflecting a lot. Like, "Oh, coach, I did this and this, like, because you said it." Like, "No, man, that was all you. You did all the work, And well, yes, I feel that everybody's successes are on their own, and I feel like being a coach is just being a guide. I think that it's important to understand that, like, yes, like, you put yourself in a position where you can impact somebody else, And I mean, I'm sure, man, like, you've had people come to you and say, "Man, this line that you spit, like, really spoke out to me," or that, and it's hard to take credit for that, because for me, I don't want to accept that, because I feel like if I say, "Okay, I did this," because for me, that's ultimate success, is being able to change people's lives, being able to help people. And be a positive light and a guide, and set a good example for people and whatever.
Sure.
So if somebody comes to me and says that, and I say, thank you for telling me that, and that's the end of the conversation. For me, that's just accepting that I've been successful, and there's a fear of flatlining and a fear of stopping, which I think is death.
Sure.
Like, if you stop progressing, you die.
Yeah. I agree. I guess one of the larger goals, or one of the constant, consistent themes of why I do what I do, is because music, for me, I try and use as a tool to better myself in a lot of different ways. And so if I'm able to do that and continue doing that, then that's what I want to share. That's what I have to offer. Not that it might be music for you, you know what I mean? But that it's possible. Just by changing your work ethic and your mind state and things like that, it is possible to bring yourself up out of where you are and to get on the next level and the next level. And I think that fear of complacency, which I've been going through. I definitely have been going through it because, coming to the area and not knowing people and, just knocking on door to door and at first being turned down, and then you get a foot in the door, and then you play at one place, and, you start to play at the next and build connections, and then, rocking with a band, and we play some of the larger shows around here. And too many times, I could go out to a show and rock it, and then it's fun.
Yeah.
So we just party the whole rest of the night away.
Right.
And this could be any weekend. This could be any spot. And I'm like, man, I want to enjoy this success. I want to enjoy it. I deserve to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But truthfully, it's limited mindset.
Yeah.
It's a limited mindset, and getting caught up with that, the progression stops.
Right.
So it's almost you're living off of past successes, when it's time to redefine success, redefine your goals, to keep moving forward, because, I lost a lot of motivation living off of past successes.
Right.
And without that motivation, without that need to progress, who am I? What am I? What am I doing?
Right.
I'm not necessarily the same person. So when people come up and say, we do the Brewfest every year, and every time they post it, they talk about how Hold Down Upstate or Out Chasing Lions are, it's recognized. It's what do they say? It's a home. Well, either way, that it's recognized now throughout the area, and I don't. And I kind of shun away from it. Because I'm like, no, there's still more that I need to do. There's still more that can be done. And so when people come up and either congratulate or say this song or that line or thanks for this opportunity and that, I'm like, that's cool. That's cool. But exactly like you say, that's if you weren't working in a certain way, if you weren't in a certain mindset, you wouldn't recognize it as an opportunity. Recognize it as a line that might help. So I do try and push that off a little bit.
Sure.
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I can definitely relate. But it's always redefining the goals to get out of that complacency. And like I said, a lot of people are okay with that, and that's okay with me. But not for me.
Absolutely, man. I think one thing I was. Quite a while ago, I listened to a podcast that they were talking about what builds success, right? And I think one of the things they talked about was if you're successful or if you have a failure, if you have a great success or if you have a significant failure, right? To give yourself time to appreciate that and to process it, but you have to get back to work.
Right.
And they kind of gave like a 24-hour time period. The guy in this particular podcast was talking about they released a book, and the day the book dropped, they were obviously really excited about it, and rightfully so. They put a lot of hard work into it. Book came out, and they celebrated for 24 hours. They're just like, oh, this is awesome, and like for me that equals like fighting. I have whether I fight or whether I have one of my guys fight, one of my friends fight, whatever, someone I corner. They fight, win or lose, right? If we win, hell yeah, celebrate for 24 hours. Then on Monday, get back to work. But it's also important to accept failure and feel disappointed and process being disappointed. So if we fight and we lose, or if their book had bombed in that first time period or whatever happens, accept it. Yeah, I think it's important to wallow in it. I think it's important to feel that disappointment, feel that failure.
Sure.
But get back to work.
Right.
Cut yourself off. Like, no, at this point, no matter how I feel, I'm getting back to work. Because we have to be, I think we have to be validated a little bit too. We have to know that what we're doing is working.
Right.
But we can't revel in it. We can't live off past successes, like you said.
Yeah. It's funny. So I always look for signs. I always try and stay open to signs. And I remember walking down the street, and this is years ago, and there was a piece of paper on the ground, and it was kind of folded up, and I saw well on it. I picked it up, opened it up, and it said, "Don't dwell." I'm like, oh, okay. I like that, and I put it in my wallet, and I kept it there to remind me not to dwell in the downtimes, not to dwell on failure too much and stay there. But it never crossed my mind back then not to dwell in success either, because both of them, the movement, the motion stops. Yeah. But I was so focused on the failure and not to dwell in that, that I didn't have that balance. So I think that's how, and that's why I got stuck. I would get stuck in these, faults or past successes. Because I didn't take the time to fully reflect on where, in what moments do people dwell? What moments do I dwell? And so, like you said, it is important to feel that failure. Fully feel it. It's important to feel that success. But you gotta get back. Is it the rubber band theory? Where, you might be stretched in certain ways, but you're coming back to that equilibrium, to that center,
that's
which drives you.
That's an interesting metaphor too, because you get stretched out and then you come right back. But if you dwell, what happens if you take a rubber band and you stretch out and you just hold it stretched out? Eventually it loses its elasticity, and when you come back, you don't come back to center. So if you stay there too long, you lose it. That's
dangerous.
That's a really interesting, but I think a really profound metaphor. I think it's a very strong metaphor. Yes, get stretched, but come back to what's working. And I think kind of like you said, that constant work calls for constantly refining and redefining what success is to us. Because short-term success may be rocking a good show, rocking a great show, and then short-term failure is bombing. It's going out and having a bad show, which you've had your share of those. I've played with.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I've played with little cover bands here and there for the last decade or so, and which I feel like I have to be at least 50-year-old to say something like that. For the past decade, but we've had great shows and we played to dead bars, man, and that sucks, but the next day you're like, all right, that was cool, but then you can get on, I'm gonna go home and practice, you're gonna write new music, you're gonna talk to new people, meet new people, and so our successes changed, because our goals changed. And but I think long-term success is more intangible. It's more of a state of mind, as opposed to a place. And I think if you don't take time to celebrate your little successes, when are you gonna celebrate? What's your end goal? What's the last day you're going to perform music? What's the last day that that you're...
You never know.
You
never know.
Exactly. And it's not like you're like, okay, 55, I'm retiring from music. I've done all I need to do. I'm successful at 55. Hell no, man.
No, doesn't exist.
You'll be spitting bars when you don't even have teeth no more.
I'll be spitting teeth and bars.
Spitting it all, man. But so I think celebrating small successes along the way is important, because if we don't, then you never experience that happiness. We're not done, but we can be happy along the way.
No, it is true. And it's very true. And I've started this new thing the past few months where every morning, of course I have certain goals in which I'm working toward, larger goals, and tangible, both intangible and tangible goals. But also I've started focusing on micro successes. And usually they come from just the day before. So first thing when I wake up, success is ... And whatever is the kind of overlaying theme from the day before, or maybe from the day of, that I want to focus on, that's what I write down, and I kind of expand on that just to kind of start myself off in that mind state, because I think maintaining that state of mind is part of that driving factor.
Absolutely.
It's part of the driving factor.
And I think being able to define success in such a way that you're accepting of your failures. So if you perpetuate this mindset long enough, all of a sudden, you look back on yesterday, okay, what did I do? I failed yesterday, I didn't meet this goal, or this happened, or my attempt at this, I fell flat on my face, right? So whatever it is, right? For me, if I have a rough night of sparring or training or whatever, and I wake up the next morning, I'm sore, I hurt, I'm just, running over that technique in my head, whatever it is, so in that failure, okay, well, how do we succeed in that? Well, we failed because we did this and this, but the success is that now I know how to change that.
Right.
Or, you know, if you have a bad show, you know, we failed because nobody showed up. Well, the success is some people showed up, and you still performed, and you still got better, you know. So being accepting enough of life's up and downs and failures and successes to define success in such a way that even when you fail, you still succeed.
Right.
You know,
Sure.
and celebrating those and accepting them in whatever facet they come, you know.
A very necessary perspective.
Sure.
Like we were talking about, you know, partying, and when it gets to a certain extent, you know, waking up the next morning, I don't really remember the night. It's kind of foggy.
Yeah.
I don't remember my motivations, my goals.
Right.
And, you know, you got to you're starting the day by trying to put the pieces back together. And I remember, and this was, you know, a month ago or so, and I wrote success is, you know, having consistency of thought and of mood. From the negative experience, you know, I pulled what I understood from that situation and built off of that. And you know, and I recognize that that's something that I need in my life. I needed that consistency of mood or consistency of thought from day to day. In order to fully progress, just so I'm not living the same day over and over and over again. You know. So it you know, that perspective in which you can find the good in anything, the good and the bad, you know, the good in success and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For sure.
Appreciating when we succeed and then not dwelling when we fail, not dwelling in success. Yeah. Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I dig it, man.
Yeah.
Another solid Tuesday.
Absolutely.
Glad you're back, dude.
Thank you, man.
For sure.
It's good to be home. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please talk to us. If you like, just like something we said, throw a little comment down at the bottom. We'd love to chat with you a little bit more. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Awesome. We'll see you next week.